And here we go with another edition of Ask Tom Live, I do believe is what we do here. Yes, we do so many things. I had to look for a minute and see the title right down there, because last week it was missing. Uh-oh. But today we have it, and that means I'm going to be answering your questions from HomeShowRadio. And if you have some questions on this YouTube and Facebook live broadcast, just do this, whatever you do, or maybe it's your thumb thing. I'm not sure. And ask them, and we will try the best to answer them, of course. I do that every weekend, answering questions for people about their home improvement projects, whatever they are. I've been doing it for 30-plus years now on the radio and Sports Radio 610 in Houston, Texas. And you can listen to me online at HomeShowRadio.com if you want, or if you're in Houston, Sports Radio 610, as you see it right back there behind me. And it goes on from 9 to noon on Saturday, 8 to 11 on Sunday, except for a few more weekends with the football going on, because we are the Texan station. And, of course, they play at noon, and we go on 7 to 9, as we will be doing this Sunday here coming up at the end of the week. But that's what we do. And, of course, we have Danny Milliken, who starts off our Saturdays at 7 to 9 with gardening information. And he has a slew of guests and local nurseries. And gardening is big in Houston. It's big across the country. It's a great hobby, and it's a great profession for a lot of people to be in. But you can get your questions answered and learn a lot just listening to Danny. And of course, Charlie's here too. And Charlie, who's running all the buttons, making sure all those things pop up. And the Ask Tom Live thing is there, because we didn't have that last week because we had dials instead of buttons.
Yeah, we had.
I don't really know what that is.
I'll show you. See, we had this thing. We had this thing, and this thing didn't work so good. So guess where this thing is? It's over there.
We'll try in 2022.
Yeah, we're going with what works. Yeah. Now, but what we are going to do here is we're going to answer the questions you send us at HomeShowRadio.com using the Ask Tom section. You know, we pick 5 or 6 questions every week, and we put them here. We answer more of them on Sunday mornings in early edition. We answer them in the daily Ask Tom videos that we post at HomeShowRadio.com. And, of course, we do this because you can join us, too, by sending us your questions, by putting them in the comment section underneath us, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Put them in there. We'll get them. We'll do our best, our level best to answer them. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, let's talk about what's going on around the corner and up your block in home improvements this week, and actually with what's news. And what's news this week is... If you haven't heard, I'm not sure what rock you're living under, that last week that there were 4,400 reported tornadoes across 9 states that hit Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Indiana, Ohio, and Alabama. But especially hard hit was Kentucky last week. And it's like Mayfield was probably the epicenter of it. The length of one tornado's track, Tom, rivaled one in 1925, and that tornado outbreak killed hundreds. And this would be the first time this year, the one that just went through last Friday, would be the first time a tornado has been tracked across 4 states. There were 4 tornadoes in all that touched down in Kentucky Friday night. According to the governor, Andy Bashar, he said that, including one, he says, that stayed on the ground for 227 miles. That's the distance between Houston and Dallas, right?
And it was over 200 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, 227 miles, right. But 200 of the miles it traveled were in Kentucky. And to give you a scale, 200 miles is the distance between Houston and San Antonio. That tornado stayed on the ground, tearing stuff up along the way. It's the most devastating tornado in the history of the state. There were 1,000 homes destroyed. 24,000 homes and businesses are still without power. 98 people killed, 88 of them in Kentucky, and of that, 12 of them were children. And so now what they're trying to do is get help. And we want to help you help them we have set up a link for you. And because, one thing I know about Texans is we always want to help. And you can go to HomeShowRadio.com/help Kentucky. or help KY, and it'll lead you to this page that the state has set up over there, and you can make a donation to help them to come back from this. It's tax deductible, and it's the closest we've found where you can make a donation that goes directly to help the source of it. And we're going to, we don't normally do this, but we're going to go ahead and leave that link up throughout the show today so that you can go ahead and take your time to fill it out and take care of them. You know that when we needed the help here in Houston, how many states across the country came to help us when we were flooded or after a hurricane. And it's the devastation up in Kentucky is there are entire towns that have been wiped off the map. So if there's something you can do to help, that's the neighborly way to do. So, and that is what's news this week, Tom. So what do you say we get to the questions at HomeShowRadio.com? Unless you have something to add, buddy.
Well, I want to say the good thing is here in the United States, believe it or not, our building codes are better than most of the rest of the world, which would have been even more loss of life. And just to give you a perspective, in around that same time, back around 1900, when there was a hurricane in Galveston, Texas, over 2,000 people were killed. And with something so devastating as this tornado, to lose only 98, which is a horrible thing to say, is it's a miracle there weren't thousands of people that were actually killed with this. So we can always do better. We can learn from this. But it is just amazing the devastation in the buildings that happened, but that so many people we don't talk about walked out of that devastation and lived is just truly a miracle. It truly is.
And if you hear the stories, we have one we're going to share at the end of the program today that's pretty inspiring. Wow. But you hear the stories of how people were able to get out of that candle factory in particular. That was just stunning. And it's just your heart goes out to those people, and maybe some of your shekels can too to help them out. So that's what our request of you today. So let's go ahead and get to the questions. First one is from Ron in Jamaica Beach. He says, I replaced a wood-burning fireplace with gas, Tom. He says they took out the piece that mixes air and propane, but it's fairly dirty flame with some heavy soot. I want someone else to look at it. I need your recommendation. I checked with all my propane suppliers, but all the ones they know of have gone out of business. Who would you recommend to look at something like this?
Well, you look for the chimney sweeps. I would tell you Lord's Chimney, give them a call. You're talking about the orifice. Propane burns different than natural gas. Sounds like somebody messed something up. You want it to burn clean either way. And if it's burning, if they have soot, you're right, it's not burning clean. You need to have that taken care of, and don't use it until you get it taken care of. But Lord's Chimney here in the Houston area and the whole surrounding area, they are the chimney sweep experts. And if you have trouble and you can't for some reason get them to look at it, or they say it's not right, find out what kind of gas logs you have and call the manufacturer and see what kind of dealers they have. But I think Lord's Chimney and a chimney sweep is exactly who you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. And I know that Lee and his team go down to Galveston, so...
Yeah, they cover the whole area, so I don't think there's going to be a problem. I think that one call is going to take care of the problem. But take care of that problem. Don't ignore that one.
Yeah, because I imagine that while that thing's burning dirty, all that soot is lining his chimney and making for a really bad program.
Yeah, and it's not like soot from logs where you have to get it clean more often, but it's also getting in your house. You're breathing it. It's just not doing what it's supposed to do. So the soot would probably be because it's a gas soot and not a lumber soot. I think wouldn't be as near the problem as what you're breathing and what's getting in all around the house and stuff too. You just want it clean. Just don't burn it till it's clean.
Okay.
And it's probably going to be a very easy fix, actually.
Okay. Next question we got, in case you hadn't noticed, was from Donald in Woodbranch. He says, I recently bought a mobile home and noticed it has insulation with a sheet of plastic under the floor. Is that a good thing to have, Tom?
Not necessarily. They put that on there for transfer purposes, because if you ever gone behind half of a double wide mobile home on the highway and all the insulation's blowing all down the road and the plastic is waving in the wind, they put that plastic up to try to hold it all together, and nobody's ever come up with a better idea to this point about how it doesn't really work that well. But the plastic is there for transportation, not for the longevity of it, especially in the Gulf Coast area. The plastic should come down, but if it's the only thing holding the insulation up, you have to replace it with something that will breathe. So be careful, but it's not a great idea. But that is mainly for transportation, not for the process that the insulation is supposed to be going through and doing. It should have a breathable fabric of, like, say, Tyvek, chicken wire, some kind of poultry wire under there, so it'll breathe but hold the insulation up.
I wonder if that's where people get the idea of putting barriers, those moisture barriers and stuff, those vapor barriers under houses, Because how many times do we get questions? How many times do we get that question about people saying, or under the floor, like, should I put a moisture barrier down or a vapor barrier down underneath there?
Vapor barriers are used all over the place, but putting them down on the floor underneath a pier and beam on the ground, you see that done in parts of the country where it's down below, where you have kind of not a basement, but 3 or 4 feet down underground to where they have a freeze line. And there's a lot of explanations we don't go in. You just don't do that in the Houston area. And it doesn't do any good if it's up on top. Drainage is the way you handle it. You let the water drain away. It'll naturally stay dry because you have air blowing under there. It's not a sealed compartment. Vapor barriers work in walls up north on the inside, on the warm side behind the sheetrock, because when it gets freezing outside, 5 below or 10 above zero, and the moisture from the warm inside wants to migrate to the outside, if you don't stop that vapor from transferring into the wall, it'll freeze in a wall, and then you get all kinds of damage in the structure. So there are places for it, but never anywhere in the Gulf Coast area.
And that's something to keep in mind when we're answering questions on this. If you're, when you're watching, is that sometimes Tom's answers apply to south of the freeze line, and sometimes it's different to the north of it. So
it depends where the question comes from.
Sure.
And Charlie, we went syndicated. We were trying to do a radio show 2 decades ago. We thought, we could go all nationwide.
Yeah, we were young and we're full of go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but our home is the Gulf Coast, and we said, let's go back home and just do it right, because it is a specialty down here we call Zone 3. You take the Florida Peninsula, where I studied at the University of Miami, come around to the Texas Gulf Coast, where we all live now, doing the show from here. But I can handle any of the questions up from other places. I just need to know where they're from. But we are a specialty, especially on the show. You'll hear questions about Gulf Coast, Gulf Coast, Gulf Coast. And I'll tell you what, TV shows and radio shows, you won't hear that very much. Everybody wants to make it real neutral, but it's a special area that has to be handled differently.
Well, that's the nature of media in general. It's like, it's we have a problem down here. It's the 4th or 5th story in the news. New York has a cold blast. The entire country has a cold, and so and so
this old house was going to
This old house in particular.
Southern shows that got cut real fast. It didn't work at all.
This old house in particular, there's a lot of good stuff on this old house.
It's great,
but a lot of it is geared for the north, and especially the northeast. And so that's what we try to do here is try to be something that's more specific for down here. But if you got questions from the north, we're happy to take them on. Tom's an experienced builder. He can answer your questions no matter where you are.
Yep.
So,
but behind the scene, real quick. Tommy from This Old House, or Ask This Old House.
Yeah.
Where he vacations at least 1 month a year.
Let me guess, Key West.
That's right.
You beat me.
So he comes down here to see us too.
Yeah.
Well, hello, Tommy. If you ever see it, he's a good guy.
That's right.
He's a good guy.
That's right. You got a choice, Tommy. You can go to Revere or you can go to Key West. I think he's going to Key West. So
I like Key West too.
I used to live in New England. Revere Beach, probably not where you're going to find Tommy hanging out. No. Maybe up in Weymouth, go further up the North Shore maybe, but all right. Bill in San Antonio, speaking of the Gulf Coast, has one for you. He says, why is the 1-year-old tankless water heater in my new house suddenly not putting out hot water for my entire house? The cold water, he says, comes out fine, Tom.
Well, this is a strange question because he's saying cold water is coming out, and he says hot water. If it's just no hot water coming through the pipes, and there's no actual even cold water coming out the hot side, then you have to look at the water heater and see if it's got a clog somewhere. I don't know. But if it's coming out cold and he's telling me it's not hot, then of course it could be the limit switch or not enough flow or something's wrong with the water heater. So you have one of two answers to this. One is it's got a clog somewhere in the water heater where it's just not letting water through, or the valve was shut by accident going to the water heater, because they usually have valves on them. Or if it's not making hot water, then there's something wrong with the water heater. But there's no specific, hey, just hit this button, it's going to fix it. I don't know what's going on with it. But it's one of the two things. If there's no water coming through, the water heater won't come on anyway. There's no doubt about it. But that's the least of your worries, because you're wondering why no water's on that side of the house. When water comes into a house, it splits. It goes to the hot side and it goes to the cold side. And if there's somewhere in there where it's keeping the hot side from getting any water at all, then you'll just have nothing coming out when you open it up.
Well, and that raises an interesting question, because he says specifically it's a tankless water heater. And like you're saying, the limit switch might be telling the water heater it doesn't need to make any right now for one reason or another.
Well, because there's no water. So if there's no water coming out, you don't know if it's hot or cold. If the water starts flowing, the limit switch is fine, then it'll turn back on and heat the water. But the way it was written, it sounds like there's no water at all. I got to go by the way the question was written, and he said it's fine on the cold side, but there's no water on the hot side. Then you better look for
I'm looking at
that split somewhere and find out if somebody turned a valve off.
I was just looking at how he wrote the question. You're exactly right. I had taken it that it's not giving. He says he wrote specifically. He says here specifically, the 1-year-old is in my house suddenly not putting out hot water for my entire house.
Right, but the cold comes out fine.
Right.
So I'm assuming there's no water. So on that, you got to trace your pipes and find out if it's clogged or a valve is shut. Somebody shut a valve and didn't.
Now, on the other hand, if it's just not putting out enough, it may need the thing about tankless water heaters that I've learned from working with plumbers around the country is that people mistakenly think tankless means maintenance free. And nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, they need flushing every year, or things build up inside that little manifold.
Depends if they're electric and gas. They take different maintenance. Gas ones don't take as much as electric, because you have the electric elements that need to be cleaned. If you really want to do the maintenance on there and just not replace them when they go bad, sometimes people just do that. But yeah, and they also have a limit switch, and what a lot of people don't realize, if the water doesn't go fast enough through there, you have enough volume, it will not turn on and the water will come out cold. Or a lot of people experience where it goes from hot to cold while they're in the shower. And so you have to get used to turning the hot water on more and the cold water on less, and not mixing it. And that sometimes means just setting the temperature close to where you want it in the shower, turning the hot all the way on, and just give it a little cold to where you feel your comfort zone without putting too much cold in there. And that way you'll get a consistent heated stream coming through the water heater.
Okay, if you have joined us and the numbers kind of climb up as we go on, and you're wondering why we have that link down in the corner, it's because what we're doing is we're encouraging y'all to do what people do for us in the Texas area when we have trouble, and people ride to our welcome. Ride to our aid, I should say. And so what we've arranged for is we set up a link on our website that links over to this website right here. If you go to homeshowradio.com/helpky, it'll take you to Team Kentucky, where you can help make some donations. I'm sure any donation will help. There are entire communities without houses. I think what the number was, some absurdly high number. What was it? 24,000 homes and businesses are without power. They don't have food. It is as bad or worse a situation as we've ever seen with a tornado here in the Gulf Coast. So we're just leaving that up to encourage you to do something, to do the right thing and help those folk over there in their moment of need. So next question for us comes from Jeanette in Houston. She says, we have a hose that leads from the dishwasher up through the granite counter. And I've heard of these. We don't have one in our house, but I've heard of these. We were told it was needed when we built our house, but now it leaks water, Tom, and I've cleaned the hose, but it still shoots out water. Can I just remove this and reroute it?
Just get rid of it. Yeah, just get rid of it and don't use it. There was a time when they were required. Some individual municipalities required. It's like an air gap is what it's called. It makes no sense. All the suds comes out. It's I don't know why they did it. And we always question it. And I remember building homes where we'd get the inspection, and after the inspector would leave, I can say it now because I'm not building homes anymore, we would remove it for the client and then have them move in, and they were fine. So then there's a few tricks that we had to play back here and there to make people happy. But as far as it goes, just get rid of it, and they don't require them anymore. I don't know why they did for a while, why some places picked it up, One of the things I can tell you with a lot of things that happen in the industry, when plumbing and electrical, the codes change and they'll require new types of devices and things. It's not always for the protection or for the benefit of the homeowner. There's a lot of money involved. When you have a device that you developed that goes into a required code across the country, you can imagine how it's going to beef your sales up a little bit. So there's a lot of superfluous things in there that if you're an educated builder and electrician and plumbers, you got to kind of weed through it all and make sure your clients are getting the best with their safety always in mind.
Yeah, codes were written for the purest of intent.
Yeah, and they're minimum too. Hopefully, you will go beyond just what the minimum standards are. If it's an area of an area that you are, like tornado areas for wind and stuff or things of that nature, that you exceed them. They're just minimal. Sometimes people call them, they were designed just to protect the horses and the cattle indoors, and that's where codes kind of came from, is protecting livestock, because they were very valuable a million years ago.
And some were written
Probably
to protect.
still are now. I mean, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Don't diminish that. That's true.
And some of them were written to protect distributors and manufacturers. And
Yeah, well, that's now, yeah.
being the skeptic that I am. So,
Yes.
all right. Hey, I got a question, and I got to warn you, this is going to be a mess on the screen. I'm going to clean it up as soon as I bring this out, but I can't do it backstage. I got to do this in front of the house here when I bring this up. Jimmy John has a question for you about his water heater. Oh,
Hey,
look, it
Jimmy
fits
John.
just fine. He says, I have a two 40-gallon A.O. Smith gas water heaters connected side by side. The tank from the water supply side feels hot, but the second one, which goes out, doesn't feel warm at all. Should I be worried? Any recommendations? He says, we like hot water. Apparently so.
Well, first off, if you're not running out and you have all the hot water you want, I don't know if there's any problem with it. But on a water heater, you have the cold water going in on one, which will feel kind of warm, but really it's not too hot. And then you'll have one coming out that'll be hot. It should be the same on both water heaters if they're working. Now, if you have two together, and it depends how they're wired, if they're in tandem or if they're parallel. But if you're using both, you should feel a hot side and a cold side. And it'll say on top of them hot and cold, so it'll be pretty obvious if you just touch them what the hot side is. But if you have one going to one side of the house, one going to the other side of the house, and only one is working at the time, that's going to feel hot where the other one won't. So it depends how they're plumbed
he
up.
says they're tandem, Tom.
Okay. Which means you're
means the
filling
first
one
one's
to
doing all
other
the
and
work.
then
The first one's doing all the work. The second one's kind of like...
Yeah, it'll come on and off as it needs to. So it depends. What it is you have a preheat and a post-heat. And so the one it's coming out of still should be hot because it's going into one and out the other. So it should be hot on both of them. If one of them is not hot, sometimes only one is working. You'll be surprised how some people will go, and you might not have done this in your house, and shut one down and only use one, and the other one's just a tank running water through it because they don't want to pay for keeping both of them hot. So you always got to check that too, or if there's one broken and one's working, you won't know it.
I'll tell you what, we, as you know, Trifection came out and redid our master bath earlier this year and put in one of those fancy pants walk-in all-glass showers in our house.
Yes.
And Jimmy John,
Fancy pants, yes.
I'm thinking about you. Well, actually, there were no pants. It's a shower. But anyway, I'll let that visual just sink in for a minute. But anyway, it's the dangest thing. Since we got that big walk-in shower, our water bill has gone up. It's the weirdest thing.
Okay. Well,
somebody's taking longer showers, and I'm going to talk to me about it.
Oh, that'll cause nice pleasantries in the house.
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
an extra $25 a month in a water. Enjoy your shower.
If it was $20, I wouldn't be talking about it. No, it's a whole buttload more than that. I'll just say that. All right. Last question we got here from the Ask Tom section of Home Show Radio comes from Deborah in Angleton. She says, we're shopping for replacement windows for our 40-year-old home, Tom. Are composites still a good choice in this area? And what concerns should I have in choosing a window?
Yeah, composites are good windows. You have a lot of choices today. You have even aluminum windows are a choice today for replacement because of the way they're engineered now. And I think they're one of my favorites because of the rigidity of them and the small frame. So you have a lot of options. Gulf Coast Windows being a great certified home show pro here at Home Show Radio. They have several lines of windows you can look at, but composites, vinyls, aluminums. You can even get really higher end wood windows. Not that I really would recommend it in Houston unless you're redoing an older house in the Heights or something and you want that purity of a wood window. They still have some really nice ones now. So you have a lot of choices, but I'm not going to say a composite is bad if you buy the right kind of composite. Look at them. Some of them are made out of sawdust. Some of them are made out of high-end plastics and things. So there's a lot of difference. The word composite is a very general term. And so you got to make sure you look closely at the actual composite material you're buying. That goes with doors too, by the way.
All right. By the way, Tom mentioned Gulf Coast Windows are one of our Home Show Pros. If you're looking for any of our Home Show Pros, you will find them at HomeShowRadio.com. We're going to scroll up here. Oh, no, wait, I hit the wrong button. This one. This is the one we want. I hit the wrong animation there. All right. You scroll up, you'll find all our Home Show Pros are right here. These are people Tom has checked out. And if you know what, but you don't know who would do it, then you come here. We also have under Find a Pro, you'll find that we have them organized by category so you can find the people you're looking for. Now, as to that other animation we just saw a moment ago, there's this one here. This is, if you want to get your questions in, you go to HomeShowRadio.com, click on that Ask Tom button. And by the way, you can send us your question as a video or you can send it in writing. Either way, we'd love to get it. But go ahead and fill this form out right here on our website, and then you can send pictures, and that's great. And we use your questions not only here on the show, here on our Facebook Live show, but on Early Edition on Sunday mornings, and we post new videos. Tom has done this for years, so much so that there are thousands of answer videos on our YouTube channel. I mean, we were looking at some of them the other day, and next week, I'm going to play the number one most played Ask Tom video by two young guys who you may mistake for us. Yeah, it was that long ago.
Might have had a little more.
Yeah, we're gonna play it here on the program next week. But that's the deal. And you, in the meantime, though, if you want to get to Tom and get questions asked live, you can hear them on the radio every weekend.
Yes, you can. I'm still picturing hair. I'm looking at my little monitor. Woo, okay. Anyway, Saturday 9 to noon, Sunday, this Sunday at least 7 to 9, and we'll be hitting our regular schedule in 2022. On Sundays, that'll be 8 to 11 on Sports Radio 610. But don't you forget Danny Milliken. He is here every Saturday from 7 to 9, our gardening expert. He's a great guy. Personally, I can tell you, I like him, I respect him, and he knows his stuff. And he leads you down a path of doing it the easy way and not just sell, because in the gardening industry, there are a lot of chemicals, a lot of products, and you can get just lost buying everything and don't. Mm-hmm. You'll end up poisoning the world, and then everything will be banned. Use it properly. Call me.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And by the way,
yes.
Tom, I know how much you like things that change all the time. And Chad just prompted me to remind you and tell everybody that there's a brand new phone number for Home Show Radio and the Garden Pros every weekend.
Oh, I have that here.
Okay.
Hold on. Chad sent it to me today. It is 281-833-3333 or 833-3333.
You know, do me a favor.
That's for my Brownsville.
Boys and girls, if you would call and ask Tom your questions in Spanish this weekend, that would be awesome.
Hey, I work in Brownsville. I'm starting to learn it.
I'm sure it's an immersion thing. It's an immersion thing. I'm thinking living in Brownsville, you're probably learning lots of different Spanish, Ecuadorian Spanish and okay. Anyway.
No, I'm not working with the people coming across. I'm working with the locals, but I like it, and it's not forever, but it's temporary. But I'm really having a good time.
Well, we do this every Thursday at about 4:00 Central Time, give or take, and we'd love you to be a part of it. And before we go, we got one more thing we want to share with you. We take you back to Kentucky for just a moment of inspiration.
Oh.
A gentleman named Jordan Bays didn't know that his sister was capturing a private moment as he sat down at his waterlogged grand piano earlier this week, a day after the tornado blew the roof off his home in Kentucky, to play There's Something About the Name, a Christian hymn. And he said it had been rattling around his head for days. His sister says, I feel like people are using this for whatever they're facing, and it's brought a lot of peace to them in their storm. And if you'd like to help people through their storm, remember that you can do that real easy by using the link there at homeshowradio.com/help Kentucky and do people a lot of good. And we will see y'all next week.
See ya.
Got a question? Ask Tom on Home Show Radio.